Good morning, everybody. I'm not going to do the sales pitch here for you, but I'll give you the Ed can go into this a little bit further than I can, but I'll give you the quick of what we do at Rubicon. We're an information security organization who basically takes a little bit more of a business approach to helping our clients as far as what their goals, wants, and needs are, and working with them, kind of almost like more of a partnership to accomplish those goals. On our tactical side of the house, we do everything from penetration testing, web apps, vulnerability assessments, a little bit of incident response. And on the strategic side, we will do risk assessments, policy, procedure review, compliance reviews, framework, roadmap development. In addition to all of that, well, I should say what we don't do, we don't sell hardware and software. In addition to that, we are also an accredited, authorized ISACA training organization. So we teach all the ISACA courses, and we do customized training as well. We also do advisory services. And then we are kind of well known in the community, and this is where I'll segue into Ed. Ed is pretty high up in the ISACA organization. We're actually put out by them all over the world to do training, and Ed has actually co-authored the new risk platform. And there's even more stuff than that coming on. But if anybody has any questions with anything that we can assist with, or just general questions for me, I think Ed's got on one of the slides here my email and phone number. I used to, before COVID, get up to Toledo more for a handful of luncheons and dinners. Met David, seen him there, seen him over in Cleveland, all over the place. If there's anything I can do to help anybody, please feel free to reach out. On that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ed and let him take it from there.
All right. Ed, do you want me to? Would you like me to introduce you, or would you like to do that yourself?
Sure. I always like to hear people talk about me. It feeds my ego.
Well, you were good enough to share your bio, but it would take me an hour and a half to read it. So I did take away some talking points, which I'll share with the group. Ed is an active information security professional, as an active practitioner, mentor, an instructor with over 30 years experience with Fortune 100 companies, various domestic, state, federal, and foreign government agencies. Industries he's supported include financial services, defense, industrial base, retail, electric power, transmission distribution, hospitality, healthcare, construction, insurance, technology, aviation, media, the list goes on. Ed's often invited to present and speak on a variety of topics, as Jeff mentioned, including social engineering, incident response and digital forensics, threat intelligence analysis and management, practical security, data visualization, advanced attack and penetration testing, IT audit development, enterprise governance and risk management, and adopting information security as part of corporate culture. Now, as Jeff mentioned, Rubicon is deployed by ISACA to deliver training, variety of training courses for the ISACA certifications. And Ed is to that end, Ed is an accredited ISACA instructor for the CISM, C-RISC, CGEIT, and COBIT certification paths, as well as co-authoring the body of knowledge review materials for the CGEIT and C-RISC certifications. In addition to developing and delivering training on a variety of information security, cybersecurity, governance, audit, risk, and privacy courses. The topic of Ed's presentation will be ransomware recovery, but I hope he'll have a few minutes to talk about the various ISACA certifications. Our chapter is in the market for a provider to help provide support to our members for passing these exams. So it's good to have a friend in the business, as they say. So without further ado, let me turn the floor over to Ed McCabe.
David, thank you very much. And wow, when you say what I have done, it really makes me feel legacy, because I've been around. Usually when I introduce myself, it's just, hi, I'm Ed. But to that end, as David mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit before we get into the ransomware recovery about some of those areas around information security, specifically around career development and things that we can do, credentialing being one of them. So again, we are going to have fun today. My intent is to ensure that everybody is not feeling like tethered to their workstation. I know with the pandemic, things like WebEx and Zoom have all become the 21st century version of a seance, where it's like, hey, are you there? Can you send a sign? Can you hear us? So my hope is that today we're both engaged and that you like the presentation. And if you like the presentation, my name's Ed, and if you don't have fun, my name is Jeff. So with that, let's talk about the different topics of certifications. We know that in 2019, ISACA turned 50, and at present we have a total of 6 core certifications that are offered, as well as 5 certificate programs that are also offered. After 5 decades, the association has grown to over 135,000 members across 220 chapters across the globe, and has a support staff of about 200 or so at international headquarters in Illinois. Year after year, ISACA continues to grow in size, offering the greatest opportunities for career development and professional growth. So real quick, we'll take a quick walk down through memory lane. We'll go a little bit back before before times when going to the grocery store wasn't a life-threatening event. So from an ISACA perspective, in 2016, as most of you remember, ISACA acquired the CMMI Institute, and this was a turning point for ISACA as an industry, because now we made one of the larger acquisitions for an accepted industry standard body that was recognized. The value that we gain as members within ISACA is that by incorporating the CMM helps broaden the focus of professionals and their organizations in optimizing the use of technologies and related information systems. This ultimately translates to increasing value for those stakeholders and improving overall business performance. We saw this first come into fruition when they launched COBIT 2019, where we actually incorporated CMMI into the core framework with COBIT. We also saw in that year that they announced that the CISA platform, or the CISA certification, was getting a update. They moved to the 27th edition for release in 2019. In 2019, they did release that in June of that year. And again, when we talk about the information systems audit, those domains that we have there are the auditing process, governance and management of IT, information systems acquisition, development and implementation, the information security operations and business resiliency, and wrapping it up with the protection of information assets. Much has changed since the initial release of the CISA certification. In 2020, we've seen a couple of additional moves. As mentioned, I was one of the co-authors on the governance of enterprise IT. We launched the 8th edition in 2020. We also saw ISACA deliver and start their first engineer technology-focused certification with the CDIPSI. They also announced that they were going to be uplifting the risk and information systems control certification body, which at that time dealt with governance of enterprise IT, or pardon me, dealt with the identification, assessment, response and mitigation, and control monitoring and reporting around risks. And that is going to be releasing here. My last information that I had with regards to the C-risk is they were planning by Q1 of 2021 of making those content available. Now, for those of you who are looking at going after the C-risk, this is a breakdown side by side. So under the 6th edition, we had 4 core domains that we were going to look at that dealt with risk identification, assessment, response and mitigation, and then control, monitoring, and reporting of those risks. What we've done in the new edition is we've condensed the first 2 domains, identification and assessment of IT risk, into its own domain, domain 2. However, we've also included the concept of risk governance and organizational governance. Again, we're tying a lot of this back to organizational's transparency, visibility, delivering stakeholder value. And I will tell you, as a practitioner, risk is the linchpin in delivering that. We've also collapsed the risk response and mitigation and control monitoring and reporting into one domain, as we demonstrate here, the risk response and reporting section, as well as adding in a new domain altogether for IT and security, where we dive into some of the IT principles and information system security principles as well. So for those of you who are interested in getting it, stand by. This is going to be an interesting time as we come out. We get a lot more depth and detail around some of the aspects of risk, especially when it comes to the identification, analysis, and evaluation components under the risk assessment. Starting with the C Guide, they wanted to start putting more focus on, and we're seeing this within the industry, within risk quantification, especially as more boards and regulatory environments are driving requirements and making requests to have boards demonstrate that they are actually putting financial values around some of these risks. One of the risks that we'll be talking about today is the risk and impact associated with ransomware. So all of this is for one key purpose, and that's to get ready for the pre-pandemic or the post-pandemic times, right? Where you're investing in future-proofing your actual career. So one of the things I'll recommend, and you're doing this today, when we invest in yourself. Some of the other things you can do is blog and promote your personal brands. Use things like Medium, the Engage platform on ISACA, LinkedIn, you name it. Get out there and share what you're doing. Which leads me into my next area. Conduct your own research. Take on a small project where you identify and solve a problem, then write a post about it. Share your findings. Apologize for that. Learn the business. Learn the business. Find a mentor who can share other business units' perspectives, and seek out someone who you can shadow and learn more. One of the things that I've seen over the span of 30 plus years is a lot of folks in IT have the right intent and the right focus, but they cannot communicate that effectively back to the business. Learn what the business is concerned about. Learn as much as you can. Connect with others from various functions within your organization. Every time I teach a class, whether it's COBIT, C-Guide, C-Risk, CISM, one of the big emphases that I put on is building those business relationships. Again, work on becoming a better communicator. Create engaging presentations and be a pervasive storyteller. Share the story of what you're seeing. Describe your work and provide the associated metrics. Align what you're doing. If you're presenting to your local organization, align what you're doing, the functions that you serve and capabilities that you're delivering with the organization's goals, and share with them how you are a business enabler. A lot of the times folks will look at auditors, security practitioners, risk practitioners as being, the obstacle in the road. We will overcome that. And then last but not least, become a leader, or not last, but near last, second to the last, become a leader. Focus on learning concepts around leadership and team building. This is one of the areas that I will say, we saw this in the 2020 State of the Union report put out by ISACA. One of the biggest barriers that a lot of hiring managers have is the lack of soft skills. Being able to communicate effectively, being able to lead, and not being so reliant on the hard skills. That's not to say that the hard skills aren't needed, but we need to be able to lead our teams as well as upper leadership to better protect and minimize that risk. And then last but not least, one of the things I'll say is volunteer. I know here at Rubicon, we have a number of folks that have volunteered with various organizations, whether that's with ISC Squared, ISACA, ISSA. Because this is an ISACA meeting, there are a number of opportunities to get involved with ISACA, whether that's contributing as a exam question writer, getting on one of the bodies of knowledge and helping develop that content. Again, share what you have learned with others and give back, because I will tell you honestly, out of all the organizations that I've belonged to, ISACA is one of the better organizations for sharing and helping mature and grow their organizations. And now, on with the reason why most of us are here. We're going to talk today about ransomware recovery. As mentioned, as David was so eloquent in putting, I am legacy. I am an accredited instructor with ISACA. I speak quite frequently. In fact, I think my wife, one day we were sitting there and she told me that I talk a lot, and we were just sitting on the couch, and I was like, I haven't said a word in like 30 minutes. She's like, no, I Googled you and you took up like the first 5 pages on the results. I've worked with various organizations across the globe, whether that's been in foreign or domestic governments, commercial, public, private sectors, nonprofits. I've also had the opportunity to write a number of unique courses, specifically for the industry as well as outside, and get involved in some really interesting projects. As Jeff mentioned, Rubicon is focused on providing that management advisory. We specialize in governance, risk, compliance, information and cybersecurity, audit and assurance, as well as privacy. We provide both the practical and business aligned solutions to integrate with different organizations. We don't just try and put a round peg in a square hole. With that, make sure I also announce as messaged. So Jeff is here. Jeff, I'll make sure and put out his information. I did see he sent a message out. He is our VP of Sales and Training Coordinator when it comes to getting folks credentialed, whether that's through a one-on-one session or open forum or for the enterprise. Some of Jeff's favorite things, fishing, cooking, and one that he's most passionate about is stopping cyber criminals, candlelight dinners, walks on the beach. I think I got the your dating profile, Jeff. I do apologize for that. But yes, he does like to walk on the beach. So with that, so why are we here? Well, we're talking about ransomware recovery. And the first step in understanding how to combat ransomware is admitting we have a problem. And I will tell you, we do have some really big problems that we're facing in the industry. We're seeing more and more fileless malware, where in-memory execution and reflectively loading code so it never hits the disk. And what that means is traditional antivirus is going by the wayside. I'm not saying get rid of antivirus, but it doesn't offer the same protection that it did 10, 15, 20 years ago. We're also seeing a shift away from specific malware packages to what we call living off the land and using the organization's own environment against themselves. Why do I need to upload and potentially have a package that I install on a system when I can just use the built-in tools to transfer files out? Of course, we have the common, nation-state threat actors, folks in China that are focused on supply chain compromises and gaining, a leverage on the economic markets, being able to advance their strategic interests. This includes areas such as, energy development, healthcare, biotech, pharmaceuticals. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. Of course, we know Russia. They tend to go after a variety of different targets, most notably recently attribution for the SolarWinds attack and the compromise of several government organizations. They're also home and host to a large number of the cyber criminals that are perpetuating some of the ransomware schemes that we're seeing today. North Korea, Iran, again, these are not uncommon. We're seeing the progression from into big game hunting, and then a little bit around the results of ransomware is, are we inadvertently supporting espionage? with North Korea, one of the reasons why they're so prolific in some of these cases is because they're attempting to use cryptocurrency to bypass some of the sanctions, and we know that cryptocurrency is not something that you can relatively trace back to the same way you can with a bank account or a credit card to an individual or to an organization. So as we dive in today, we'll talk a little bit about the evolution of ransomware, some of the considerations that you have. We'll do a walkthrough of 5 case studies that I've been directly involved in. We'll talk about ways that you can recover from ransomware, and then I'll share some closing thoughts on what we can do as an organization, as practitioners, to help enable and ensure that if we are hit, that the business makes the best decisions possible when it comes to how to address being attacked. Anybody in here, and I don't know if everybody's how active everybody is, but is ransomware really a new thing? Normally, I like to poll the audience and find out, how many of you think that this is something that's new within the last 5 years, 10 years, 12 years. I like to usually go down and show the timeline of the various different types of ransomware that have been discovered. However, for us, it actually started back in 1989 with the cyborg Trojan. That was 32 years ago. And what's interesting is a lot of the ransomware we're seeing today can self-propagate over networks. It can run its own exploits. For those of you who are old enough to remember, the cyber virus was sent by floppy disk. By floppy. And after running it, the user would be prompted and shown this screen, and again, extorting the user for being able to access their system. This was actually started by a doctor who basically lost his marbles. Ultimately, he was charged with multiple blackmail accounts and tried to use the malware and the ransomware to defend himself by saying that it was going towards AIDS research. Well, as it turns out, ransom and extortion aren't really tied to that case. So fast forward almost 20-some years to the summer of 2016, and can anybody tell me what happened in 2016? Does anybody remember what happened there? Yeah, we could go outside, right?
How the fuck am I gonna know what happened?
So in 2016, we had the evidence of the shadow brokers, right? And what happened with shadow brokers is they were able to compromise a certain nation state's actual attack kit. Within the span of a few months, it led to ultimately a very large attack, specifically on Mother's Day of 2017, when a lot of folks were introduced to WannaCry. This was an unprecedented attack because it leveraged actual, no kidding, nation state threat actors using 2 separate exploits. One of them being Eternal Blue, which exploited the small message blocks version 1 protocol from Microsoft, as well as the double pulsar. Now, SMB is what we usually use for file sharing within the local network. However, this did bring into light some really interesting things because it used the SMB protocol to propagate and exploit, and then it added in a second exploit called double pulsar, which compromised the kernel, allowing it to persist within the system. And then it deployed the payload. Over 200 impacted organizations of various sizes, everybody from FedEx to the National Health System was impacted by this. And I want to make sure and clear as I show the next one, this is not the current pandemic. This is actually the systems that were reporting in where they were actually attacked, which which begs the question, why was this so bad? So we have two very distinct problems to unpack here. First, because it was spreading via SMB, people had to make the conscious decision to allow that unfettered access through their firewalls. They had to make a conscious decision that said, this is a good idea. And when we look at the fact that there were over 200,000 organizations, that means over 200,000 someones thought it was perfectly fine to allow SMB, Windows file sharing beyond their boundaries. The second issue that we have to unpack is of course, that our old stalwart friend of system patching. When do we patch, and why is that important? And a lot of organizations, again, patching is not something we just do willy-nilly, but it is something that we need to give greater importance and focus on to make sure we're doing it right. We can choose not to patch, but we also have to deal with the results of that. So when we look at it from a timeline, keeping in mind, summer of 2016 is when Shadow Brokers got the tools. They were very vocal about those tools and what they were going to do with those tools, and ultimately provide that information. In the meantime, on the backside, the NSA had reached out to Microsoft and said, oh, by the way, that SMB1 stuff is probably going to need to be patched. So Microsoft worked diligently to get that information out. Well, as soon as that patch goes out, the bad guys are going to start looking at what it addresses to find where that vulnerability could be exploited. So they're going to look in changes, and that's going to drop some additional information on where they need to focus. Then we had the actual dump, we went back to business as usual, because even though the patch was available, don't need a patch. Then we had the actual dump that occurred, where the actual tools were now available in the wild. This gave the bad guys the early Christmas gift, leading up to that Mother's Day attack in May, or what I like to call the dumpster fire of things. Again, when we talk about the different types of ransomware, traditionally what we've seen is two specific types. One, which is crypto-based, it attacks specific files and types. The other is a locker-based, which affects and attacks the entire system, making it unusable. Crypto just locks your files. You can still get on the system, watch cat videos, join an ISACA meeting. The other one locks up the entire system. Neither one of them leads to a very good day. So previously, as we talked about, a lot of organizations, when we engage with them, we ask them the specific question, what's your plan if you come in on that Monday morning and find out you have a ransom? And a lot of organizations, they state that they have a strategy, and Hahnemann Institute previously had done a study, and 56% of organizations admitted that they were not ready for a ransomware attack. 38% stated that they had a strategy to actually respond. And I know some of you out there that are dealing with math are looking at that, and you're like, Ed, 56 and 38 is not equal to 100%. And you were correct. And that's because I honestly believe that the remaining 6% couldn't actually reply because of the fact that they were undergoing an actual ransomware event. Just my theory. So one of the things that we want to talk about is why there's a rise in ransomware. And it's predominantly because of the low barriers to entry, as well as it's now being more commoditized as an actual service. David, might
we're working on unmuting everybody that's not you.
Thank you.
While we're doing that, if we can all self-police and unmute our.
And I think, am I still muted? I don't know if I'm muted or not now.
I can hear you, Ed.
Okay. Good.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's I like puppies. I like little puppies a lot more than big puppies, but that's another story. So the rise of ransomware, again, the availability of online marketplaces being provided as an actual service. I can go in and rent out the associated botnets or service infrastructure that I need to be able to launch it. And this is compounded with the rise of cryptocurrency. So we see, and full credit to Javad Malik, who allowed me to use his wonderful graphics here. It's a very low cost entry with yielding high returns. And when you stop and think about it from an adversarial perspective, again, when you look at a traditional attack, the amount of time that's required to set up, additional resources, you do leave a trail. You do leave a trail. The time to sell, larger investments are being made and accepting lower margins. Again, most cyber criminal organizations operate like a legitimate organization. They're looking at the investments they're making, their margins, they've got their finance team, they've got their supply chain, they've got their consumers. And as it turns out, criminals will always find a way to make money. Criminals got a criminal even in a pandemic. With the availability of the tools, it has become a lot cheaper to build or buy those services. As it turns out, criminal syndicates don't care how much damage they wreak. If they make 50,000 or 60,000 or 100,000, they've made money. Which, as it turns out, is a no-brainer. If I have to invest a lot of time and effort in a traditional attack with lower margins versus a ransomware attack, which is easier and will net greater gains, it truly becomes simple math. So when you look at the cost of developing ransomware, figure 160 hours of development time, and because we're generous cyber criminals, we'll pay them, $200 an hour, so $32,000 cost. Disposable infrastructure, we can get servers as low as $50 that are reliable. That's another, $500. To push the button at the start of the attack, that cost me, say, $50, because that's usually what I don't get out of bed for. Say we're only going to monitor it for a period of 10 days, and we're going to have a call center, we're going to have a help desk, and we're going to pay those folks $150 an hour in total for running it for just 10 days. 24,000 gives me the whopping investment of about $56,000. Now, if I launch this to 1 million targets, and only 1% of them pay at $300 per system, I've made $3 million on a $56,000 investment. Yeah. So why are we still doing the blue team stuff and not just all becoming, ransomware experts? Probably because I know for me personally, Ed does not look good in orange. Orange would not be the new black. But this is the mindset to keep in mind. The adversaries have already done the math, and they understand that for their investment, it's a very high yield for a very minimal investment. How many of, and usually I'd poll the room and say, how many people would be willing to invest, $60,000 to make back 2.9 million? And I think everybody would be scrambling to sell, get rid of their kids' college plan for that one, 401ks. And originally what we started out, as I mentioned, criminals didn't care. So they were casting very wide nets. The only thing they were focused on was making monies. They wanted to make all the monies. And we saw this originally start within the consumer market where, mom and dad would get hit and their images of grandchildren would be locked up. College students would get hit. Their master thesis was locked up. They couldn't get to it. And what was happening was the criminals were piloting, for all intents and purposes, a proof of concept. Would people be willing to pay? So they were casting these nets everywhere, and they were making money hand over fist. And like everything else, when you start realizing that you have a cash cow, you're going to mature that capability. So what they ended up doing is they went from casting nets, and what we're seeing now in the industry is as moving into that big game hunting. There has been a significant rise in what is now known as big game hunting, and this is essentially the process that the adversaries and the cyber criminals are taking by focusing on high value data and assets within the organization. Instead of casting that wide net, they're breaking in, they're spending time, they're learning about the organization, and from there they are then moving forward to launch surgical strikes and make it very, very painful. Some of the tactics and targets that we're seeing, the number one that we're seeing everywhere is healthcare. Healthcare, and having worked with a lot of healthcare organizations, their biggest concern is patient safety and care, and they know that if they get hit with ransomware, it's almost a no-brainer to just pay the ransom and allow, because in their mind's eye, it's protecting their patient, and people's lives are on the line. The adversaries are choosing their targets, and they know they are sensitive to downtime. They're using that against them because they are more likely to pay the ransom, regardless of how costly that ransom may be. They tend to target industries that depend on IT. And guess what? In 2021, almost every organization or every industry out there is relying on IT. They're also going after those government agencies, whether that be at the municipality and county level, all the way up to the federal side. I will say that they tend to target counties and municipalities a lot more frequently than the state and federal side, because they've gotten a fine balance between what the insurance companies will cover, and they know exactly how much they can ask. The tactics that we know that they're using, no surprise, they're still focusing on using phishing campaigns, getting that initial foothold in. They're exploiting RDP systems, and we know that RDP is secure out of the box sometimes. No, it's absolutely not. We've had a number of instances where recently with things like exploits like Bluekeep that totally bypass that and make RDP a fun-filled protocol for everybody. They're also consistently exploiting known vulnerabilities in the plethora and cornucopia of software that is in our environment. So where do we start to combat this? So first of all, training. Attack the problem with the people. Patch those systems that we can. Understand what the environment is. Have policies and enforce said policies. I will tell you from an adversary perspective, a couple of things on this that I truly despise when I'm attempting to legally break into an organization are things such as multi-factor authentication and app whitelisting. If they're properly deployed, it prevents me from running a number of any number of exploits. But when it comes to some of these, application whitelisting prevents me from launching my own unapproved software, but it doesn't prevent me from impacting the organization using their own tools against them too. Some of the other areas, one of the biggest areas that we can take and talk about is backup and disaster recovery. And of course, our fun-filled friend, ensure multi-layer comprehensive measures are in place. The concept of defense in depth. This is not a new concept. It's been around since we've all started using computer systems. Why are ransomware attacks continuing to rise? Well, as it turns out, the criminals have a plan. It's a well-tested, well-thought-out plan, and they stick to their plan, which is a lot better than we do. It disrupts business operations. As I mentioned, hospitals will tend to pay to get back up online in order to save patients' lives. Manufacturing is going to pay to get that line back up and operating. We know that it's going to take a lot of time to recover from backups. If it takes us a week or two to successfully recover, that means we've lost a week of productivity, and it may be more cost effective to actually pay, which brings us into the next one. Organizations are paying. And they're paying for two different things. As we see big game hunting starting to progress, one of the things that we're seeing is traditionally it was with big game hunting, we just lock your systems up and then you pay us to recover those keys. That's one reason they're doing it. And we'll talk about, just because you pay doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get your data back, or that you'll even get the keys. If you get the keys, great. You just paid somebody who's already previously compromised you. What does that decryption application actually do? Does it actually decrypt? The other reason organizations are paying, the criminals have gotten intelligent, or more intelligent and more aggressive. There's also exfiltrating large amounts of data outside of the organization. And they're threatening to make it public. So not only do you have the feature of, one, you can't do business, two, you may or may not get your data back, or three, they may disclose the data and make it public, which may not be bad. I know of some instances where the adversary has said, hey, listen, we've got your systems, we'll pay for the decryption key, and the company's come back and said, listen, we'll recover from backups. We are paying so you don't make the information public. Again, not a guarantee. Some of the things to consider when the data is no longer yours, and the proliferation, and I know a lot of times, especially with a lot of the ransomware that's out there, it all comes in. And a lot of us are like, well, why doesn't the user just stop clicking? Adversaries are attacking users, not systems. They're not always dropping some new 0-day against you. As it turns out, they're attacking people. And just saying, just stop the clicking already doesn't actually address that, because I will tell you, as an adversarial, somebody who simulates adversaries, I can always get your organization, somebody in your organization, to click on something malicious. And that's because I understand that your accounts payable staff is going to always open that email attachment if the subject line says overdue invoice, or your legal counsel, appeal denied for this case, or your HR department who's looking at resumes for new positions. Again, we have controls that we can put in place, but this is a people problem. When we put these controls in place, we want them to be transparent to the user as possible. As it turns out, users will find a way around our controls. Remember, the user is just trying to do their job. And if we put these bolt-on areas of security controls in place, they're going to find ways around that. Additionally, one of the hard questions that exists for organizations to answer is, what do we know around that user and that data? Because once ransomware impacts a system, one of the key things to realize, that ransomware will have the same permissions and same level of access as that user. That means network file shares, application, in some cases, mapped applications. There are a number of different things. Understand what that user has access to. Because if that user has access, then the ransomware also has access. And we'll dive into that in one of our case studies, with one of the biggest problems that we face outside of the patching question, but overprivileged users. One of the common questions I always get asked is, should we pay the ransom? And really, I don't like to pay a ransom. I don't like to be extorted. It's my data. I'm going to recover from backups. But I also have set RTOs, RPOs, all the associated aspects. If your business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan does not include ransomware, that is one of the first things that you should go back and take a look at. Paying the ransom may be cheap compared to the overall value of the data. Can you live without that data? Can you live without that system? And then that allows us to get back to business as usual. The same business as usual that got you into the problem to begin with. On the con side of the scales, you know, are you sponsoring ISIS? Are you supporting human trafficking by paying the ransom? Are you supporting North Korea? Potential file corruption. Again, just because you pay doesn't mean you're going to get your actual data back. You could also introduce malware back into your system. If they stopped you once, or if they attacked you once, they may come back to the well again. So this was from a colleague of mine, Swift on Security. Again, this is from 2016. 2016, this may have made sense. Now it's not such an easy question. But you have to consider certain things. Things that we should be considering. Let's take a look at what's happening within the industry. So some of the high-profile cases that have existed, we know the Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center. This happened where they were attacked, and the adversary asked for, at the time, for approximately 40 Bitcoin. And at that time, that was roughly $17,000. The IT administrator responded and said, "Do you know who we are?" And then sent a litany back. And as a result, the associated price went from 40 Bitcoin to 9,000 Bitcoin, roughly $3 million. Case lesson learned here, don't taunt the attacker. Nayana, they were a Korean hosting provider. 3,000 of their customers, they were the ones hit. So if you're using somebody that you may be doing offshore development, you may want to consider something along this lines. While they are a hosting provider, they got hit, and as a result, 3,000 of their customers, they actually worked out a deal where they would pay in installments. Third installment came. They did not get the key. They had a total of an agreed payment plan with a criminal, mind you, of making 4 payments of $250,000 each, with the third payment getting them the keys. They made the third payment, and surprise, surprise, no keys came. One of the folks that we worked with up in Ottawa, they got hit. They got hit on Friday because that seems to be like the time that ransomware likes to attack, is usually on Fridays. Holiday weekends, 3-day extended weekends. However, this organization had a very mature incident response capability. So within a matter of a few moments that they'd been hit, they knew, they were able to respond, and they were able to be back up and running by the following Monday. Again, the more you're prepared for the attack, you will survive. You will be able to resume. You're still going to have an impact. However, you're going to be able to move forward. Again, some of the questions that came up with regards to Hollywood Presbyterian here in the U.S., they're governed under this little thing called HIPAA that came out rather recently, back in 1996, which actually calls out having those contingency plans in place to address these. They were down for several weeks as a result of this. This is not something that is easily discussed, other than why was this as big of an impact? When we talk about, your engagement and encounters with the different types of threat actors that are spawning ransomware, some are very structured, they're very mature, others not so much. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do Yelp reviews for ransomware recovery. We can't say that, hey, Fancy Bear, yes, they attacked us, they extorted us, but you know what? They had 24/7 help desks. They were timely, as opposed to the no-name users who took 3 days to respond back to us. When an organization gets attacked, they are asked for some type of cryptocurrency, and I tend to go with Bitcoin as my example because everybody knows Bitcoin. But whether it's Bitcoin or whatever type of cryptocurrency that you're looking at, keep in mind there's some also common challenges. how easy do you think it is to actually get Bitcoin? Can you go down to the local bank and make it? How are you going to get your procurement department to sign off of it? Good Lord. I mean, we have a difficult enough time getting our approved budgets to get approved by the procurement department. Now we're going to go ask them for this magical, mythical, ethereal currency, and we're asking for a very large amount, right? What are the legal implications? Again, are we supporting nation-state threat actors? Are we promoting some type of illegal activity beyond simple extortion and blackmail? If we buy it, do we have to report it on our taxes? What happens when the market spikes, as we've seen with a lot of the cryptocurrencies? You know, we buy it at 1,000 today, and tomorrow it's worth 10,000 or 19,000. That's a gain. How does that impact you on your taxes? Can you travel with it? When we leave the U.S., most times you cannot travel with anything more than $10,000 without having to declare it. What happens if you have a spike in cryptocurrency and what you thought was only 10,000 is now worth 30,000? As much as I hate to say it, when it comes to the topic of valuing the data, you know, if the data lost and the IR costs and the lost productivity is greater than the ransom, it may make business sense to pay the ransom. It's not ideal. It's not what I like. I wish we would spend what we would spend on a potential ransom with getting prepared for it, because that's going to be a lot cheaper than the impact in the long run. So with that, we're going to dive into some of the ransomware case studies. So one of the cases that I got to work on was with an aircraft manufacturer. I'll give you a quick visual. See if you guys can figure out this visualization. One of the areas that I deal with is data visualization, because people tend to absorb information a lot easier with visuals than with walls of text. So what we have here, the attack went down as such. Individual opened a phishing email that contained a malicious file, did not report the incident. As a result, the ransomware was to run over a 14-hour period and encrypt the files, locking up 90% of the network systems that were impacted. And by impacted, I mean the business was at a near standstill. Everything that could have gone wrong absolutely went wrong, from the email getting in to the fact that it wasn't reported, to having 14 hours of unrestricted access. It's what we call the making of that perfect storm. These are the add-ons that we had into it. So we have no privileged user, lack of network segmentation and service segmentation, unconditional trust, leading to a dumpster fire of an organization, dealing with the outcome of a ransomware event. Now, let me tell you the tale of an overprivileged user. An administrative assistant is not equal to an administrator. What had happened was they had their admin assistant that was put into the administrator group because somewhere, somehow, they thought the two were related, and how nice that Windows was already pre-populated for those administrator positions. Again, as I mentioned, that's not a good thing, as this gave the user near unlimited access and authorization across the entirety of the corporate network. Unrestricted. And like most cases straight out of the X-File, this user account had access to everything on their network. File shares, application, sensitive information, more information that they actually needed or should have had access to in the performance of their job. What this ultimately led to was a cascading failure, right? Where we saw that multiple business units were now unable to perform their duty. I took great ironic humor that compliance and audit and legal all got hit, because talking with their CIO, those were the biggest advocates for preventing the spend on security. The only department that was not actually impacted was their engineering. not because of any type of segmentation. It was because engineering had been complaining for the last 3 years that they needed their own network, and had actually gotten funding about 6 months prior. And right before the attack hit, before they connected to the main network, that's when that network was actually stood up. So they were actually able to have their engineering department unaffected, but everything else was down. First thing we talked about is said, hey, so tell us about your backups. Can you recover? CIO said, yep, we've got that covered. We have backups. And I was like, cool. How do you have it? And they're like, we have a combination of a tape library as well as disk. Guess who had access to the backups? The same administrative assistant who got infected with the ransomware. This led to unconditional trust issues. Everybody trusted everybody. Everybody that's doing their job wants to do it. They had some serious problems. Originally, they had no log retention. Now they're doing centralized logging. They're capturing 30 days of net flow and enrolling 48 hours of full packet capture to allow their IT staff to identify if there's any ransomware. As it turns out, they had a revisited a discussion. One of the things that the executives didn't want IT doing was disrupting and upsetting users. As it turns out, executives like the ability to generate revenue more than having upset users. So now a lot of their employees are on board with this. They didn't have any security policies. Now they have those policies in place and they're on board. Where they started off originally being unprepared, they've now run, and I'd have to go back and validate with Nick to find out, but they had run 2 unannounced incident response tests and actually did very well. When we jump to the end, again, 100% of the data was ultimately able to be recovered. Phased information security, they're making improvements, but they spent $25,000 on us to do that. Did it help the business and IT bridge that gap? I would like to say I hope so. But at the end of the day, this should never have happened. And one of the root causes here was those 3 that I mentioned from the very beginning, right? Overprivileged user, lack of segmentation, unconditional trust. Now, we talked about earlier how some of the organizations are going after municipalities and county governments. Yes, so much yes. As it turns out, because taxes are spent, decisions have to be made as to where money is going to be spent. And of course, all the counties are going to be considering spending on cybersecurity protection efforts. We met with the folks. They said that they knew ransomware inside and out. And I just shook my head and said, okay, cool. As it turns out, not so much. They were not prepared. But some of you may be asking, why do we target a county government? Why attack? It's simply low-hanging fruit. It's a no-brainer. Unlike their Fortune 500 counterparts and the private sector they do not have the resources to bear those attacks. Most of the time, counties, especially some of your more rural counties, may have shared IT services, or they may outsource a component of them. So when an adversary attacks them and launches a ransomware attack against a municipality, they have a high confidence that they're going to be able to successfully execute and then just sit back and wait to get paid. We're seeing this with a lot of larger cities now starting to also get their insurance carriers involved to pay that ransom. As it also turns out, county governments have access to tons of information. That information has value and lots of value in the right or wrong people, as it turns out. So let me set the stage for everybody on this incident response to ransomware. So county organization, open SMB v1 to the internet, because why not? That never ends well, right? Let's just make our shares publicly available. What could possibly happen? No centralized logging. In fact, when we asked them about logs, they were like, yeah, we keep them for 4 days. and then we get rid of them. And I was like, oh, if we had the logs, at least we knew what happened on the system and maybe, the path that the adversary took. When we asked them for their network architecture, their network was flat. And by flat, I mean you could fall off the end of the internet. That's how flat it was. When we asked them about things like, packet capture and network capture, the folks looked at us like we were asking them to go find the magical mythical unicorn. Lateral movements in networks. This is one of those areas that I like to bring up that have to be clearly documented. Pardon me. The reason why all of these things are important: centralized logging, knowing your network, packet capture. It plays into understanding the movement that the adversary takes in your environment. Being able to reconstruct that is a good thing. Being able to know that the adversary went from this system to this system, and this is how they were able to get in and execute or action on their objectives is important. When we looked at the system, this started around 9 o'clock, almost 10 o'clock at night. Again, it came in through the SMBV1 that was exposed to the internet. There was no centralized logging. Again, they kept the logs on system for roughly 4 days before purging them. Flat network. We were told that packet capture and net flow was hard. And I think that's when I slipped up and I said, you know what else is hard? That first hour of litigation for a data breach. There was a lot of lateral movement, not because we had identified that from the logs, centralized logging, but just by the timestamp and migration of the ransomware and encryption of files, we were able to reconstruct that and synthesize that data. We had identified a total of 340 systems that had been impacted out of an unknown number. As it turns out, the county did not have a accurate asset inventory. They didn't know what was in their environment. So to visualize the attack, so again, this started at around 10 o'clock. Right after they had accessed the systems, we saw that they started deleting the system level logs. Then they started moving into some of the more aggressive features around deleting the local backups, the shadow volume copies. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, they left behind a note. Then the county started seeing a progression. It hit some of their fire department, the sheriff's department, the county jail, utilities, DAs. And then and this is when we got called in, was when the tax assessors and the animal shelter were hit. That's when we were actually engaged. So almost a full week had gone by from this attack before being engaged. The problem here is, as we see from the 21st through the 25th, this became whack-a-mole for them. They would think that they would have it contained in one area, and then it would jump and migrate to another one. The problem was they were stomping on evidence the entire time. And incident response and digital forensics are not a DIY project that you want to take as a weekend gig. Some of the impacts that they had, the local jail could not process or release inmates, so they couldn't bring new inmates in. They couldn't release anybody. The sheriff's department was able to access its system to respond to some of the 911 calls that had come in. The local passport office could not actually process passports. Water utility treatment capabilities were severely diminished. They weren't taken offline entirely because thankfully somebody had gotten in there and soon enough and actually separated out OT and IT networks. Fire department, county courthouse, voter registration. Again, especially this year, when you consider things like voter registration, not being able to do that. And finally, the tax assessor's office. And I don't know if it was because of their inability to generate revenue for the county that made them take note, or if it was actually because of the animal shelter that was impacted. Part of me hopes that truly it was the animal shelter. So when we worked with them, we understand firewall reviews to make sure that they're not allowing all network traffic out. They outsourced log retention to a third party. They're looking at re-architecting their network at the time. NetFlow and packet capture, they actually became firm believers. I'm one of those firm believers. Packet don't lie. So they're outsourced that to a third party, as well as security operations, where they had none. Now they have eyes on glass. Again, municipality totally unprepared for the incident. At the end of this, most of the business critical systems were able to be successfully recovered. For them, other than the productivity, their direct incident costs were under $68,000. Again, this could have been avoided. As we move forward, we'll talk about the construction company, because why would you attack a construction company? You know, they're a construction company. You don't think of this as a high-profile target unless you're a criminal. And you listen to the Wu-Tang Clan. Cash rules everything around me, and an adversary is going to attack any organization they can in hopes of getting money. Which brings me up to my next point. When you get that note, never directly communicate or attempt to negotiate with them. In the case that we dealt with here, they got hit with a ransomware, and they were told specifically how much to pay. Now, this was one of those cases where it seemed odd because of the amount that they were asking for. So the adversary was actually asking for $200,000 in payment. And this is still in that transition time when ransomware was casting nets, and before we got into the proliferation of what is now big game hunting. We had told the client, please do not reach out, but lawyers got a lawyer. So the lawyer, Todd, reached out and said, you know what, we can't pay the $200,000 that you're asking for, as unfortunately this exceeds our current fiscal accountabilities. We can offer to pay $200,000 between the two. And they were saying that's what they were going to do. What was interesting was when they said that they could only pay the $20,000, it was several hours had gone by before they received the response from the attackers, the adversary. The adversary's response was rather comical if you're on the outside and not actually having to deal with it, because what they came back with was, Todd, after much internal discussion, we strongly recommend you fire your CFO and pay the requested amount. The following is your current balance based upon your company's ledger. You can pay. So they shifted tactics to say, you guys are trying to go the cheap route, and they didn't realize that this group had been in the environment for a significant amount of time, to the point where they actually had the company ledger, and also made the recommendation of firing their CFO. And I'm taking that because they couldn't math. May have been the argument. So again, they brute forced here. We saw that they brute forced the RDP. However, to their credit, they tried to implement security by running RDP on a different port, because we all know that works so well. There was no centralized logging, but they did have logs that went back for a period of 90 days on the systems. And when it comes to system logs versus centralized logs, I'll take logs where I can, but my preference is get that centralized log and not the logs off the system, because I can tamper with those. They also had a flat network, no packet capture or NetFlow. The adversary was able to become the bid administrator and laterally move. Here, they actually impacted and targeted 43 servers and 200 workstations across 19 active sites, which brought their production to a volt. Now, they were able to successfully recover their information. It cost them about $250,000 to do such, because they had to go with another third party to actually broker the recovery of that. They ended up paying the $200,000 in ransom. Getting into our next, this one is a hospital. This was one that Jeff and I worked here in Ohio. And we know whenever we go to a doctor's office, it's not going to be pleasant. Just a FYI, they were working hard for this one to occur. They had a number of overprivileged users. Data was everywhere. Patient data, employee data, it was all over the place. Desktops, laptops, mobile devices, cloud, vendor workstations, servers. Bad part was they didn't have a full inventory of where actually it was, and they had no defined boundaries. The staff who had purchased work devices so they could use them from anywhere didn't follow the same rules. They would use them not only at the office, but on vacation, home, internet. They would use them Starbucks, Panera Bread. There was no endpoint security. They had an overworked IT staff. They had a total of 4 individuals in IT. They had a CIO, they had a director of IT, and 2 help desk technicians. Again, smaller hospital organization, overworked IT staff, no security. They used the same local admin password account on over 400 of those devices that they knew of. Again, no InfoSec staff. They were also dealing with a very public breach. What we discovered during the course of the investigation, we had an email that came in because phishing, right? And as it turns out, Nurse Betty was the proud recipient of that phishing email, and she got that email, opened it up, sent it along to one of her doctors, who, as it turns out, doctors like to share, so they sent it to another and another before it finally went to the admin assistant and the help desk. From the help desk, it then went to the CIO. Like I said, several terabytes of data, regulated, sensitive, personally identifiable, regulated under HIPAA, under protected health information, was everywhere on the environment, or in the environment. So once that CIO got it, they started looking at all those systems. Well, as it turns out, the CIO had access to a lot of the critical systems, as well did the HR department, the admin assistant. And that put additional information at risk. Now, when these systems get locked up, this is a double whammy, especially if you're in healthcare, because ransomware, under their guidance back in, I think it was 2014, came out and said ransomware is a reportable offense. It has to be released as a data breach. Again, when they talked about the result of a ransomware attack, it constitutes the unauthorized individuals have taken possession and control. It is a disclosure and is required to be reported. Now, the bad part about this, as we were on site, this is one of the things that I noticed. They actually had a picnic table in their environment that they had sunk and put concrete posts in and chained their picnic table to the ground. That means one of the doctors gave more thought to protecting a picnic table than their patient's data. So let's fast forward to the end of this. Again, the patients and employees were impacted. Again, having to announce a data breach as a result of ransomware, never a fun topic for discussion, especially when it impacts not just your consumers and your customers, but also the staff that that enable you to do this. Their data breach went over $1 million. And surprise, surprise, it could have been avoided. Last but not least, we're going to dive into a private school. And again, here they had a lot of the same issues, what I call the trifecta of evil. Overprivileged users, lack of segmentation, and in their case, they had weak credentials. Their attack came in on a Friday evening. As I mentioned, for some reason, cyber criminals like to work on the weekend. I like to take time off, but they're making sure that doesn't happen. They were able to brute force the RDP system that was publicly exposed. again, no multi-factor, just brute forced it till they got in. They were minimized and centralized logging. However, they were not monitored in real time because it is a school. My perpetual protagonist or antagonist, flat networks. No packet capture, no net flow. We were able to identify lateral movement, but they'd actually started seeing. This is when we started seeing more and more of those big game hunting. They targeted specific servers, which was a benefit to the school. In total, there was 3.2 terabytes of data that was encrypted on those file servers, or those 5 servers. Again, this happened on Friday because Friday I'm getting for the weekend and I want to respond to an incident. They had access within the environment for 48 hours. Ultimately, what the impact came out to be, and I know I've been all doom and gloom, but this actually has a good story, because they did have a solid backup and recovery program that they had. They had it tested. They validated it on originally they started validating it on a quarterly basis, then it went to monthly, and then they'd gotten it down so tight that they were able to do this in a bi-weekly rotation, so every 2 weeks. The school had logging in place, which allowed them to follow the activities of the attackers, so that way they knew only these 5 systems were affected, that there were no other systems that were impacted. Silver lining, they were able to be back up and operational by Monday morning. Now, yes, they did have an impact, and IT did not like that weekend. However, because they were sufficiently prepared, they were able to move forward. Again, minimal data loss. They did lose some data, but it wasn't enough to have them. A major noteworthy event. They were able to respond to this for under $5,000. They were re-engineering the remote access, increasing logging and outsourced monitoring services. Again, proper planning prevented the incident from becoming a major incident, which ties us into the next one. Proper prior planning, preparation, and testing, all things that we have to do. So from a planning aspect, we should be training for those ransomware attacks. What do we do? What does a user do? What does Bob in finance, who doesn't know IT other than what to put in to process a payment, what does he do when he gets that note or he gets something suspicious? Train our users. Let our users become a force multiplier for us. Yes, they're going to report things and we're going to have some false positives, but I'd rather have 1,000 false positives and get that one true and be able to action it than be caught totally off guard as I'm trying to enjoy a margarita on a Friday night instead of having to respond to an incident. Baseline our network. Understand what good is. You can't find bad if you don't know what good is. Understand user behavior and patterns. Is Bob logging in from Uruguay every Saturday afternoon at 2:00 Central? May want to find out if Bob's got a house down there. Maybe that's what he's processing his payments for. Get your incident response capabilities to a level where you can address ransomware. A lot of the times we've seen, and I know down here in Columbus with some of the organizations, they view incident response as a check the box compliance initiative instead of how to recover in light of adversity. We want to ensure that we have the capabilities. Make sure that the leadership knows that we can only respond to these types of incidents. A lot of times they hear incident response and they think, oh, well, you can handle anything. Nope, doesn't work that way. In addition to having our business continuity plans documented and our DR plans ready to go, test them. For the love of all that is holy, test them. You don't want to be testing out your BCP DR in the middle of a fire any more than you want to be testing it out during an actual ransomware case. Again, a lot of these things that we could do, but they require a investment, and it doesn't have to be a large investment. Make sure that we do the right things, properly segment, role-based access, ensuring that people only have access to what they need to do their job. When we talk about moving into preparation and defense, getting into restricting user permissions, segmenting our network, And I know I say that like it sounds easy. Keep in mind when I say segment the network, that is not something that happens overnight. That's the equivalent of trying to move the office building 3 inches to the left. You're going to break something. You need to think it out. It needs to be properly architected. Be able to perform full packet captures on the network. If anything, identify where those choke points are. In the case of the county, one of the reasons why we were able to do this is when we got implemented, one of the systems that was still communicating actually had the key that was being used, which allowed us to recover some of the files. Continuous monitoring. Make sure that you have a centralized location and that you're actually watching it and acting on it. Again, go back to training those users. Get them aware, get the users aware of why this is important. Of course, I can't close this out without mentioning patch management. Again, patch to reduce the risk of that exposure. As it applies and makes sense for the business, you have to weigh those costs. Continuous vulnerability assessment and monitoring. Again, verify that you are resilient to those types of attacks. And then last but not least, backup recovery, storage, and solutions. Again, this protects the organization from the impact of ransomware. If I can recover files that have been encrypted due to a ransomware attack, I don't have to worry about that if I can get it back in the next couple of minutes, do I? It sounded like somebody was making a salad. So in closing, ransomware is not just an IT problem, it's an actual business issue. One that we can reduce the impact. We don't have to be the victim, and we can ultimately make a difference for the organization. And if you're not going to do it to protect your organization, just remember, do it for them. All right, Dave, that's all I have, sir.
Well, thank you, Ed, for a very thorough presentation. There were a couple of questions that came through on the chat. We have 5 minutes scheduled for our meeting, but if you have more time to answer any other questions, that's great. If not, certainly understandable.
Absolutely. I'm available. Actually, let me put that back up there. There we go.
Okay.
Yep, there we go. Where do I find the questions? Okay, there's the chat.
Oh, well, actually, I can read them too if you like.
Oh, okay, that works.
In a typical ransomware attack without extortion to disclose the sensitive data, are files encrypted and kept locally? Does the attack work by encrypting each file one by one, replacing the encrypted files with originals on the local storage?
It depends on the variant. Oh, make sure. Okay, I'm not having a mute fail. It depends on the type of ransomware. We've seen different variants and strains where it'll actually go file by file. Early types of ransomware would only look for very specific types of files. So if it had a doc file, for example, it may hit all your .doc but miss all your docx. We see others that are targeting specific folders on the system, where to look in my documents or to look for shared paths. It all depends upon the variant of the ransomware. What we're seeing now with the big game hunters, though, is what they're actually doing is once they get a foothold in the environment, they're identifying, and it's human driven, they're identifying what's getting encrypted. So they may encrypt, one system may only have one drive that gets encrypted, where another one may only have one directory or two that gets encrypted, and everything else is normal. They're going after very precise targets of impact.
I see. Great. Thank you. And then the next question, for the payment of ransomware, are you seeing that being covered by cyber liability insurance or other?
So we do know that a number of insurers, in fact, there was a case in recent history where it was discovered that an insurer was working in combination with a cyber criminal to extort, and they were splitting the proceeds 50-50. That's a fringe. I hope to God that's a fringe element. We are seeing organizations that are covering ransomware to some level. And as it turns out, the criminals know this. So they're targeting the cost of recovery to come in just below that threshold, so the insurance companies will pay. Now, like most things that get abused, I think it's only a matter of time before insurers are like, enough is enough. And I know one of the cases that we worked that actually Jeff was privy to, the insurer, which was very well known globally, was trying to find every reason to get out of paying the insurance. And that is, as it turns out, insurance is a good thing, but it is a business thing. And it is not uncommon for insurers to delay, deny, and defer payment to keep those costs. But I've seen on other cases, not ransomware specific, where a organization was found to be found to have misrepresented themselves on the initial questionnaire, that was totally unrelated to the breach case itself, and the insurance company said, nope, you misrepresented. We're not gonna validate the claim, and you're gonna hold the costs. Insurance companies are in business to make money. They'll gladly take your money, but it's going to be a fight to pay out if something goes sideways. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see increased legislation and regulatory oversight that's going to push how we address the security and defenses within our organizations to be able to give sufficient confidence to the insurer long before they take us on as a claimant.
I see. Thank you. I had a couple other questions personally, but I wanted to see if anybody else had any questions they would like to ask first. Not hearing any. Let me just ask.
Everybody's still on.
I thought there was another one in the chat, but here we go. If the backups were also encrypted, how could the aircraft manufacturer that you referred to earlier recover data? You don't have to reveal company secrets, of course.
So one of the things that had happened with that one specifically was the one good thing that they didn't do was turn those systems off. The systems that had got attacked, while yes, they were able to encrypt the systems, they didn't turn or power cycle the systems, which means everything was still present in memory. We were able to actually recover the host's memory and pull the keys out of memory. And that was something that one of my counterparts at the time, he was big on host memory forensics. And that was our number one go-to with anything, was get the memory. Now, a lot of the systems that we saw, a lot of people will turn the system off, trying to protect the system. That's a decision that has to be made. But sometimes it's a lot easier just to pull the plug from the network and leave the system powered on, because if I come in, that's one of the first things I'm going to ask for is memory, because a lot of those times those keys will be still memory resident in memory. And if we can recover the data out of there, then awesome.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions from the group? If not, I'm just going to ask one of my questions, and then maybe we can call it a day. Earlier in your presentation, you talked about the number of the various industries that are more susceptible to a ransomware attack. Has that list changed in the last, say, decade?
It absolutely has. Where we're seeing a lot of it, what it's actually transitioned from was more from the impacting the individual consumer to starting to impact enterprises. And historically, the leaders of ransomware events tend to be hospitals. And they've stayed in the forefront. Now, you've had some shifts between manufacturing and agriculture, believe it or not. But healthcare tends to be the number one leader. And having worked with some very large healthcare providers, it's rather disturbing to hear how they approach. I know of several large healthcare providers here in the U.S. where their SOP is they pay. Instead of doing, working on fixing the problem, it's paying. It's like, okay, so Ed's theory of treating the symptom is a lot more lucrative than actually providing the cure, which, by the way, doctors don't like it when you use their own terminology against them. We have seen a spike in recently with the educational community, and that was a unique spin that occurred as a direct impact from the pandemic. So when the pandemic forced a lot of schools to go virtual, it became another revenue stream for the cyber criminals because they could lock up a school and now the school can't deliver. And now what are you going to do? So we saw that. Again, the progression that we see is not a pleasant one. Healthcare still leads to the top of the list. We're seeing, I forecast personally that we're going to continue to see that attack on healthcare, and it's really interesting. I was listening to a colleague of mine, and we were having a roundtable discussion, and he deals a lot with like getting into dark web and doing research and communicating with some of these cyber actors, these threat actors, and there is an active conversation going on between the criminals who are saying, "Hey, this is a pandemic. People are dying, and we shouldn't be doing this, even if we are criminals." Then you have the other camp that says, and that's why they should pay. So even with the criminal community, I don't want to say honor amongst thieves, but even with the criminal community, there's a question of ethics of should we be doing this, and you have folks saying yes and folks saying no. I guess it's but I see one of the bigger trends that I actually see happening, and I talked about this several years ago, ransomware is being a vector for hedging stocks. So if I attack a publicly traded company, I know that they're going to be hit, so I'm going to hit them right at the right time. And then my attack plan changes, right? I don't really care about the ransomware. What I'm going to care about is making that news public on a Friday before the exchange closes and short the stock. Right? Because everybody knows that after a data breach announcement or a ransomware event, stocks take a drop, and I'm going to hedge that. So really, I see the ransomware as being just another vehicle to generate revenue, but I'm going to do it via a securities platform at that point, securities trading platform. That one was that warranted a visit by some folks from Uncle Sam's folks when I mentioned that at a conference.
I see. Great. Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Dave. Didn't mean to.
No, please. I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, if there's any questions, feel free. I know on a Wednesday afternoon, a lot of us are now officially tired of the constant video conferences. So I do appreciate you making the time and investing the time. I know we had a little bit longer normal chapter meeting, but again, I appreciate it predominantly because I like sharing the information that I've collected over my tenure, but also because of the fact that like most of us, I'm now on day 3,000 of Bring Your Child to Work Day. So any adult human interaction I have is greatly appreciated.
I'm glad we were able to provide that service to you, Ed. Great job. Perhaps we can give Ed and Jeff virtual applause. Thank you. Very informative presentation. That concludes our chapter meeting. Join us on March 24th for our next chapter meeting, which will be joint with the Northwest Ohio IIA chapter. Dr. Clinton Longenecker will be speaking on the subject of navigating through these unprecedented times, especially when you are on day 3,000 of Bring Your Child to Work Day. All right. Thank you again, everybody, and we'll see you in March. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.